Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, students, faculty, and our lovely panelists that we have today. So you are in, if you don't know, the accounting and finance panel. And starting over there, we have Paul, Kevin, Nick, and Bob here on the end. Let them introduce themselves when I finish up here. This is a great lineup, so pay attention and, come up with questions as the panel goes on to ask at the end. And we thank all of you here on the panel for generously sharing your time and insights with our students here. Everyone is really excited to have you here today. A few housekeeping rules for the students in the audience. You must stay for the entirety of the panel. We ask that you don't leave. If you have to use the washroom or some emergency such as that, please go out this bottom door right here and make sure you come back in that way. If you're claiming this on your learning passport, we will give you a survey to fill out, and you'll have to pass that in order for us to stamp your passport. I know I don't need to say this, but I will. We ask that you remain silent when we have our panelists speaking or someone is asking a question. And at the end, after we have asked 8 of our panel questions, you will have the opportunity to ask your own questions. And without further ado, we will start with our first panel question. So for question 1, please introduce yourself, your position, and the company you work for. We can start with Bob.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Kolonko. I am the Director of Payroll and Accounts Payable for the Nova Scotia Health Authority.
We'll go down the line, just
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Nicholas Bell. I live in Truro. Happy to say I work in Truro. I work as a senior associate in the audit and assurance practice for PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Hello, my name is Kevin Matson. I am the manager of financial operations at the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Ryan. I'm a commercial account manager with CUA here in Halifax.
Perfect. So question 2, and we can start with Nicholas or whoever comes up with the answer first. What led you to this position that you're in today? And you can explain that through education, job experience, co-op, any just insights.
So I had a little bit of a long journey to get in with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I started my first couple of years in school at the community college, so I did the 2+2, the articulation agreement with the Mount. So as part of my time at NSCC, I had to do a work term. I was lucky enough to get in with PwC in the Truro office. I sort of kept that relationship going, and as I went to the Mount here, I worked in the summers, and I worked as in tax time as an assistant in our Halifax office. So I sort of built that relationship while I was in school, and I was lucky enough when I graduated to get a position there with them in the Truro office.
We can have Bob next.
Sorry. So I began my journey with my Bachelor of Business Administration degree, which I received from University of Cape Breton. Once receiving that, I figured I'd come to the big city and get a job in management and rule the world, but that didn't really pan out. I realized quickly that you had to earn your stripes and start somewhere lower than that. So I worked in various clerical roles at first, and first of all in the hospitality industry actually, and was there for a few years. Realized that if I wanted to get a more senior role, I needed to go back and maybe gain some more education around accounting and finance. So I began my journey of the CGA program, was in that for a number of years. I then transitioned into healthcare, and in particular finance within healthcare, and worked there in various analytical roles, then up to manager of budget and planning, and now into my current role of director of payroll and accounts payable. So really it was both education and experience that led me on, or got me where I am today.
Perfect. We can have Paul next.
Well, I guess there's the role I'm in today, and then there's the what sort of led to that. So I left school probably 20 years ago, and ended up in banking at that time, and so really spent the better part of my career as a commercial banker, and left briefly and returned, and have been in the role with CUA for about the last 3 years. So I guess it was a combination. I was an accounting major in university, was sort of targeting that path, but one thing led to another, and I ended up in banking and financial services. And I think not unlike a couple of the other folks here, started in a really basic entry-level position. I think there'll probably be a bit of the theme today is not many people leave school and end up in VP positions. So probably a lot of us, myself included, did some less than fun type roles early on in my career. But I would say all the points of the question, it was a combination of education, professional connections, network, and job experience, both early on as well as in the role that I've been for the past 3 years as a commercial banker.
And last but not least, Kevin.
Yeah, I graduated with my undergrad from Acadia 10 years ago, and I guess my my second semester, I figured that I needed to do something upon graduating, so I decided to go into the world of accounting. I always say you can always get a job in accounting. So after that, I applied for many jobs, and ended up getting hired on as an entry-level clerk at the NSLC, and took my CMA program while I was working there, and then just sort of looked for my opportunities to move up. Was patient with roles I was in. Took any opportunity I could do, including a couple mat leaves, maternity leaves, to sort of get to the next step, and then sort of that took me to where I am right now.
Thank you. So for our third question, this can pertain to all students in the room, whether they're looking for a co-op, they're graduating soon, or summer or part-time work. So, gentlemen, does your organization you work for offer summer, part-time, co-op positions, or are hiring new graduates? Anyone volunteer to start?
Yes, NSHA typically has 3 to 6 co-op students in each of the 3 semesters across the province. Some in Kentville, some in Halifax, some in Sydney. We're hoping to expand that to include Truro this year. The work terms that we have, there's some challenging and rewarding work there. Students really get the opportunity to use some of their skills around everything from maintaining spreadsheets to meeting with managers, helping them with their budgets, education and training, that kind of thing. So a really broad field there. Nova Scotia Health Authority is also a pre-approved for CPA student placements, and we now have a contact. We'll be contacting universities soon with more information around upcoming postings related to CPA.
Go next here. PwC, we definitely hire summer part-time co-op positions. That's how I started. That's how a lot of the people at our firm start. It's sort of the traditional route to go to get into the CPA program, like I did. And actually, with the new program that we have, as you start in those co-op positions, we sort of help you get ready for the CPA program. And if you do a couple of co-ops with us and one of them in a busy season, when you start with the firm, you actually end up going up a level from where you would normally start if you just walk in from university. That said, for next year, that's what you're looking for, we have hired, I think we're completed all of our summer and co-op positions, but stuff always comes up. They usually do another hiring spell in January, so there's definitely some positions to keep your eyes out for.
So the NSLC does, so typically we hire actually NSCC students for their 5-week co-op program. And traditionally, we've been able to keep them on for the summer to cover vacation leave and things of that nature. We haven't hired the official co-op position for universities. I think we did one a few years back, but not since then. It's not to say we don't. But yeah, traditionally it's we go the NSCC route to get that the 5-week unpaid internship at the end of, or co-op at the end of the program.
So absolutely, CUA, we would have summer part-time co-op and new grad opportunities. The beauty with CUA being a locally owned credit union and one of the larger ones compared to maybe some of the larger financial institutions and banks is we would have accounting roles locally, right? So traditionally some of the larger banks wouldn't necessarily have the accounting function in the smaller centers like Halifax. It would be headquartered. So if it's accounting, then we've had instances where whether it's co-op or new hires, we've brought some folks in those roles. If it was more finance related, again, because we kind of have both sides of things, same thing. We would and traditionally have hired new grads, but also through co-op or summer, a great opportunity to potentially work in one of our branches, build on some of the skills you would have around finance and really figure out in more of a part-time or summer role if that's something that's appealing. But again, both streams of personal and commercial finance as well as accounting are all things that we've hired for traditionally across all those sorts of avenues.
Thank you. So the fourth question that we have here is, how competitive are positions in the field of accounting and finance?
So at NSHA, we receive an extremely large number of applicants, as many as 100 plus for an analytical role and even higher for some of the other accounting and finance roles. So it's very competitive. I believe our organization's considered attractive and desirable place to work for several reasons. We're large enough, particularly now that we've merged from 9 districts into one, so NSHA is province-wide. So it allows for advancement and movement throughout the province. There's also close linkages with government, financial, and accounting practices. We have a variety of accounting and finance functions within our organization, from budgeting and statement preparation to auditing and analysis. So it's large enough that you have to have all these functions in-house.
So yeah, I guess I'm along the same lines here. I would say it's definitely competitive. A firm is probably the traditional route to go to get your CPA. Not anymore. There's lots of changes with the CPA program. You guys probably know them better than maybe all of us up here. But it's probably the traditional way to go, I would say, and we get tons of applications and certainly not enough positions to take everybody. So it's definitely competitive at the firm, for sure.
Yeah, I'll echo Bob's sort of statements in that when we put out, we're looking to hire an entry-level clerk, yeah, like 100 resumes come in. So our HR department does a good job of sort of weeding them out so I don't have to look at all 100 and sort of drill down to the ones that sort of are relevant to the group that I'm going to interview. But yeah, there's quite a few people looking for accounting clerk positions, and I can see the same thing for analysts. I mean, you put a financial analyst posting out there that's such a broad job description and job title that will get everyone from the banking world to accountants. So we do get lots of resumes. So it is important to stand out as well. But with that being said, I mean, if you go on any job search website right now, you'll see probably 15 to 20 jobs, like clerical accounting jobs, available at any given time. So while it's competitive, there's I feel that there's lots of opportunities available to in sort of this market.
I would say it follows in finance and financial services and banking with respect to competition. There's probably a little bit of a misconception around the types of things that bankers do, right? So I think it's competitive, but people get into it and think it's going to be looking at financial statements all day, or a lot of analysis, or a lot of analyst type work. And there is a piece of that involved in finance work. But there's also a lot, the shift in the last 20 years has certainly been towards client management and relationship management, and even elements of sales. So what tends to happen is it's competitive until someone finds out it's not quite what they thought it was. Certainly there's a wide array of roles in larger centers, but I would say in Halifax as well, where if someone's forte or their interest is more related to analysis and the numbers side of things, there's probably fewer of those roles, but it's certainly, they exist. It's probably more competitive as a result of there being fewer roles than there would be in that client-facing account management role like I do. Back to a comment I made earlier, it's, I think, adjusting your expectations around, or setting your expectations right around if you like the idea of banking, maybe starting in a role that isn't ideally where you want to be long-term, but gives you that experience to sort of counteract some of that competition for the types of gigs that you'd be more interested in longer term.
Thank you. So this fifth question that we have here today could be helpful for students, as when graduating or looking for a co-op position. You may be unsure of what positions to apply for. A lot of jobs require things such as 5 years of experience. So this next question revolves around that, and it is, what types of positions would you suggest students apply for in the accounting field or finance after they graduate?
So I would encourage people to apply for what interests you, but at the same time, do not limit yourself to that. Don't overlook what we sometimes consider lower level or entry level or clerical roles. These are the opportunities that often lead to more opportunities within the organization, particularly in larger organizations where they like to develop resources from within. I know for our organization, we develop a lot of resources in-house. That being said, we still draw a lot of students into our organization. So again, apply for what interests you, but wherever you start, give your best effort, look for new projects, be hungry for new projects, show interest in cross-training, and don't be afraid to try new things.
So yeah, I would say what positions you want to apply for. So of course, like, I'll give the shameless plug for a firm, is that that's a good route to go for sure. You definitely learn an incredible amount. After you graduate, you look back a couple of years. You've learned so much since you've graduated that it's a great way to boost your knowledge from university to get a lot of that accounting stuff if that's what you're interested in. But it also, other than a firm, it depends on what you're looking for in your life too. So for me, I was more interested in moving back home. Some of you might not be from the Halifax area. So for me, that meant that I had to customize my search for what I was looking for and what was available in the area. So, what maybe there's not some of those glamorous roles in where you're from, but, like was said there, it doesn't mean that those roles won't move up into something. So don't be afraid to apply for something that might not sound exactly what you want it to sound like at first.
Like Nick said, it all depends on what you're looking for. Right out of university, depending on what experience you have, what co-ops experience you have, what other summer job experience you have. Junior level clerk is a good to sort of get in there and sort of understand the basics of how office life works. It's much different than going to school for the day. or any junior analyst role, sort of in the corporate accounting world, posting journal entries, preparing financial statements, that sort of thing is good for that level. But yeah, it all depends on sort of what you're looking for. But I know for the most part, sort of the experience that we are looking for, people at a university is sort of that clerical role, and then from there you can sort of carve your way up, or once you get in the workforce, there's lots of other jobs available too. If you see something else in a different company that you want, just go for it. But certainly don't shy away from that entry-level job, because that gets you the real world experience that that people are looking for.
So I think I can speak to this a couple of ways. So and it says accounting, but I'll speak to accounting and banking a little bit as well. There's a tendency, I think, when we're going through our degrees it's hard, and it takes a while and it feels like it's never going to end, and then all of a sudden you're given these opportunities. So my first job after I graduated was with one of the larger banks, and I was putting stickers on file folders for like 5 hours a night, and it was awful. But I ended up working there for 10 years, right? So that's like an old guy story about, I started and put stickers on file folders. But what it meant was it was competitive enough that it was a large company, it was worth doing that for a little bit. I think with accounting roles, something I see specifically, because my clients are small and mid-sized organizations around HRM, and they have accounting departments, or they have accounting work as well. And so there's sometimes, because I went through the same thing, I was applying for accounting roles, everyone wants to work for the bigger companies because you're familiar with the brands and the names, but sometimes these small and mid-sized companies can actually use your help more, and you learn more quickly, because you can start in a junior, like I think these guys said, one of the junior, it might be an accounts payable role, who knows what it is, but the company's so small, you end up doing a whole lot more of that very quickly. And whether you stay there forever remains to be seen, but it can be a great experience that I think large organization, if that they assign some value and sort of appreciate that you've gone through that with a smaller company. So I think that's two kind of ways of looking at it.
Excellent. So number 6, the question number 6 that we have here, it looks more into the future and your guys' own opinions on where it's going. So which kind of opportunities for advancement does the industry of accounting and finance offer for students or even people who are already in the industry?
So for us at NSHA, just the sheer size and complexity of our organization tends to provide lots of opportunity. So some of the things that really contribute to that are, there's a real increased focus on accountability, on reporting, on internal controls related to the scrutiny of public funds. And this really creates a need for finance employees. So you combine this with, a growing healthcare system and a significant flow of retirees, and opportunities for advancement is increasing even more. In our organization, advancement is really based on skills and sometimes just timing, being in the right place at the right time when something opens up. But the skills have to be there. We are currently developing an internal succession planning model where employees self-identify for succession and become part of that program. Another thing to remember is interview skills. As we look at advancement, both when you first look for your job, but even afterwards, developing and maintaining really good interview skills is really important to advancement. And like preparing for exam, you really got to put the prep time in on those.
Yeah, so I guess there's two branches I can go on this too. I keep referring to working in a firm, but in the firm there's certainly still a hierarchy there. both height and width. We've definitely got a lot. You can go up. I'm in the audit and assurance practice. There's lots of levels that you can go from co-op all the way up to partner. And then there's different lines of service we have in our firm. So there's audit and assurance, there's consulting and deals, and there's there's lots of different areas you can go into. Just because you might have a major in accounting doesn't mean you necessarily need to stay there. You've still got your undergrad, your Bachelor of Business Administration. And you can go into those other branches if you think they might interest you. There's a lot of opportunities to even try out some of those branches too. But then it broader beyond a firm, I think there's a lot of those positions in accounting too, where there is areas for advancement. Maybe you'll start in AP and suddenly you'll work yourself up over the course of a few years. And maybe it's not always a vertical ladder either. You might go diagonally up too. So there's certainly, I would say, lots of opportunity for advancement.
Yeah, I think there's good, like Bob said. So with the NSLC also being a Crown corporation, the increased scrutiny of expenses that need to do more due diligence on spending does lend itself more to having perhaps an additional analyst or two than what you would normally have. On the other hand, the reality is with our economic climate, there's always a need to do more for less. When revenue growth is challenged, you go to cut expenses, so you say, okay, how can I do this smarter? So as an example, 10 years ago when I arrived as an accounts payable clerk, we had 5 accounting clerks who keyed in invoices. We've been able to get rid of 2 of them by simply being able to use a technology that basically takes data from an Excel spreadsheet and imports it into our accounting system. So things like that, I'll call it the sort of the monotonous invoice keying and stuff, that's going away and being replaced with technology. So the good news, I guess, for the people in this room is that because you will all leave here with degrees, it's important that you show that your employer that you're able to do more than that, and people aren't looking just to do sort of mindless. I'll call mindless, monotonous work, but sort of that added value piece. So if you add value to your employer will want to invest in you, and there'll be always sort of room for you to grow and develop there, or you can leverage that into go elsewhere. So I think there is room if you can sort of grab the bull by the horns and take it for yourself and run with it.
With financial services, there's one of the benefits, I guess, is there's so many different streams within the industry, and then there's so many institutions, and then there's so many kinds of roles within the streams. So, for instance, in banking, we've got our, as the big banks would, there's the retail network, so that would be your traditional, more bricks and mortar roles. So, and that can be everything from the customer service rep roles right on the front line, right up through branch managers, financial planners, personal bankers. So that's something all of us can relate to a little bit more readily because we do personal banking. Then there's my world, which is more commercial, small, mid-sized. And even within that, there's sort of a breakdown where you're maybe lending money to local companies that need $25,000 or $50,000. And then there's roles for lending money to companies who need to borrow $500,000 and upwards from there. And again, each of the institutions have versions of that. Again, the good news is a lot of those roles reside locally, so you can, depending on the arc of your plan, you can stay in this region quite easily and move through any number of different roles. I mean, there's insurance, there's financial planning, there's investment companies, and the common theme through a lot of them is very much the fundamentals of finance and those ideas. If you had to leave the region, or there were roles that it didn't exist here, there's always the big banks and the big investment firms, and the reality is in the larger centers that some of those roles reside there. So there's it's not unheard of to start here and say, like, I'd love to do X. Well, X might not exist in Halifax, but it exists in Toronto. It's the reality. So there's ample room for advancement. I would say, because in my world I deal with accounting firms quite a bit, we've seen a trend where folks might work for a large firm like Nick does, or even come from a place like NSLC and end up starting their own accounting practice, right, or their own bookkeeping practice. And that can be with degrees or without. So there's, I think, even to the side of financial services, there's, for folks that are maybe a little more entrepreneurial or say, I'd like to get some experience somewhere, but I really would like to do this on my own. It's fairly common to see folks break away once they've gotten the experience and they get comfortable with the fundamentals to go and do it on their own and sell their service to other folks.
Thank you. So as students, we've always heard that it's important to enjoy what you do. And if you, something along the lines of, if you enjoy work, you never work a day of your life. So our 7th question today is, what is it about your job that you enjoy the most?
So for me, I have to say I enjoy the leadership opportunities that it presents to me. I like to see the ability of our teams to continue to work and improve customer service. In the situation we're in Nova Scotia with healthcare and combining 9 different organizations into one authority, there's been significant challenges to that, of course, multiple systems, multiple ways of doing things, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to act as one organization. So I really am enjoying my role now. It's challenging, but at the same time rewarding to see some of this stuff start to come together. It doesn't happen overnight. We're far from perfect yet, but we're moving in the right direction. So I like being a part of that, and I really like being a part of a bigger shift and change in improvements in the healthcare system in Nova Scotia.
So I would say what I enjoy the most, a lot of times it's not the actual accounting. It's it sometimes can not be very thrilling. It just depends on what you're working on, really. But what I enjoy the most is probably the clients. A lot of people, when they think of accounting, might think you're behind a desk, all the time. I'm probably out at clients 80, 90% of the time. So I'm meeting people, I'm meeting everybody in an organization, and I'm finding out how different organizations work. So, maybe a manufacturing client, we go on a site tour and you can really appreciate what their end product, all the processes it goes through. And then you can think about all the accounting implications of different clients and how their businesses work. The other thing I guess I enjoy the most is working with all different people. So we're on our audit engagements usually. On my audit engagements, I usually have a couple of people. I'm usually the lead person on the team, and I've got 1 or 2 more junior associates with me. Everybody we work with at our firm, honestly, is really great. We have a lot of fun. And you get lots of opportunities to be in a leadership role as well, teaching more junior associates some of the ins and the outs and best practices, and teaching them about your clients and having those conversations. So it can be fun sometimes.
I'd say the thing that I enjoy the most about my job is working mostly in like cross-functional teams. So I always joke that I rarely do accounting in my job because it's mostly managing people, meeting with others to, if we're on a project, to implement something or to fix something. Retail is a dynamic industry. It's good to be a part of something that it sort of, improves the lives of Nova Scotians, makes your purchase at the liquor store a little bit easier, be it being it through the cash register with having a new POS system, or making the delivery to the store a bit easier. So that means sales staff are on the floor servicing you rather than out back receiving the product. And I guess secondly to that, it all wraps up into just making processes better. I like making the lives of other NSLC employees better. and ultimately if I can find some way to save a little bit of money in the process, then it sort of makes it all that much rewarding from an accounting point of view.
I think there's a couple things I enjoy equally. Again, I was away from financial services for a number of years, and when I returned, one of the things I missed, firstly, there's a misconception, and I think Nick touched on it, that a lot of finance and accounting professionals are behind your desk. There's certainly time behind your desk, but depending on who your clients are and depending on the work you're doing, you're very much out working with them. So my customers, our members as we call them, are small and mid-sized clients, and they're all around HRM. So they would be retailers, some of the craft brewers, restaurants, real array, contractors, construction folks, you name it. So seeing them grow and do interesting things and driving past their business and saying, yeah, man, I did something there. That's a very cool part of commercial banking. And I think if you asked a lot of commercial bankers specifically what they like, it's the interesting small to mid-sized companies that they get to work with. And the second part is why they enjoy working with them is they're often helping them solve problems, right? So there's this view that, it's sales, right? So in a lot of cases, that's my role is I sell solutions to these companies on behalf of CUA. But all that really is solving a problem for them, right? So they're growing and they need to expand, they need to borrow money to do that. So we work with them and figure out what that looks like. How do we help ultimately solve that problem? And so those two things together kind of make every day interesting in the world of a commercial banker, I guess.
Thank you. So our last question here today is question 8. Do you have any advice or suggestions for students pursuing a career in accounting or finance?
So I think my best advice would be seek experience. You're gaining a lot of knowledge here in your courses at university, and it really is about applying that knowledge. So if you can, look at every opportunity, whether it be lower level roles or volunteer work, you really have to look for any opportunity to demonstrate the skills that you've learned in your degree and elsewhere. So really important to try to diversify that experience as much as you can.
Yeah, I would say also is get out there. Some of those recruiting events or social events that some of the places have around here are really great to get out and meet people, and so that when your resume goes in, people can recognize your name. I know at our work, and I know another firm is doing this, and I think some more in industry are sort of switching to a similar approach anyway. Where your resume is one of the last things that we look at in the hiring process. So there's some questions. It's how you present yourself. We do like a video interview where you're just talking to a webcam. There's not even anyone on the other end of it. So it's really polishing up those presentation and speaking skills to show that more than just whatever your GPA is, that you're a great, well-rounded person that'll do well in that role. So. Get out there and make sure you've got great people and presentation skills.
Yeah, I think interview skills are critically important. I'm going to bring you in for an interview based on what's on your resume, but if you have a difficult time talking to somebody, then it's going to be hard to land a job. So I think working on interacting, interpersonal skills, critically important. And then take every opportunity to learn. So if you're in your first job, if there's an opportunity to ask someone a question, how that works, what do they do in the company? If you have sort of a one-off question, you say, hey, do you mind if I sort of ask you something out of the blue? For me, that sort of developed good relationships. It helps you understand more about the business and gets really into sort of some background stuff on the industry that you're in, how the business works, and it's a good way to sort of build relationships and build contacts and stuff. So don't be afraid to ask questions, and I think that goes a long way.
I think something like this, so building on this, like talk to people that are doing the jobs that you think you're interested in and get the real deal, get the good, the bad, and the ugly from them, because there's a lot of misconceptions around what certain jobs are, and I think probably in accounting and finance potentially more than anything. So you think, I want to do X, well, spend that time networking. I think Nick mentioned that, and getting to meet people within the space. Also volunteering, right? So there are plenty of opportunities. I think there's probably a number of us who volunteer on boards, right, for not-for-profit organizations. They don't have a lot of money, but they're looking for help. And it's a great way to get experience, but you're also doing some good stuff, like some cool stuff. So volunteering and networking and try. But I think just as importantly, so you talk to folks and say, I'd like to try it, so try it, right? I've had I don't know, 10 jobs in 20 years, and some of them were awful, especially the one putting stickers on file folders. But try them, and you're going to find out, right? But you don't lose that experience just because you tried it and you didn't love it. It sounds like a cliche, but that experience is valuable, if not to you, to someone else, and something that might be a little bit more appealing to you. So don't be afraid to take a chance on something and figure out whether it's for you or not, because it's easier to do that now than it is in 30 years, I promise you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all those wonderful answers. I'm sure everyone learned something here today. So we have about a half hour left. So this is your guys' opportunity out there in the audience to ask any burning questions you may have. I also ask that you just raise your hand and I will repeat the question into the mic to ensure that not only everyone in the room hears it, but the folks online get the question as well. So who wants to kick it off? Yes.
I have a question for Nick and the gentleman from the Health Authority. I've been to the Learners and Leaders Conference and talked to a lot of the bigger accounting companies. My question is, what is your level of attrition? A lot of the bigger accounting companies have said that students go to them for their CPA, get their CPA, and then leave. I want to stay with you. I want to work for 25 years for either the government or a private accounting company. Do I have the option of doing that?
Thank you. So for the folks online and everyone else in the room, that was a question regarding the level of attrition after completing a CPA program with a firm.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that is what happens a lot of the time. What the percentage is, I'm not sure. You know what? You're right. It's high. A lot of people do get their CPA there, and perhaps because of the travel, or reality is we work a lot of unpaid overtime. It's not thrilling, but there is a high rate of people that leave afterwards. But if you are interested in moving into those roles, there's certainly the opportunity there. Like we right now probably have a crunch on for managers and senior managers, and we definitely promote from within for most of those roles anyway. Maybe we get a few from other accounting roles, but I know for me there's opportunity for me to keep going. There certainly is in our other offices as well. In our St. John office, there's a limited number of people there. But all of a sudden, one person leaves and that opportunity is there. So there is some certain places where you can go up for sure.
So as far as the Health Authority, I think I'm probably a good example of someone who's remained in the system forever. I've been with the Health Authority for over 25 years. I started in a clerical role. Actually, I started as an orderly in the OR to help pay the bills. And when a clerical role opened up, I moved into that and up and up and up and up. But the diversity of our organization is huge. I mean, like I said, we do the whole gamut of accounting and management, and the field itself is very broad. Now that we've gone from 9 organizations to 1, we now have geographic diversity across the province. So that increases the opportunities even more. So if I decide that my wife gets a job in Cape Breton and we move to Cape Breton, I still may have an opportunity to just either stay within the organization or to change to a different role that's local there. So definitely a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I would just add to that too, like for the health authority and for PwC, like even if there's a role that maybe it doesn't exist, you know, maybe there's not a manager position in the Truro office, but there is in the St. John office. Well, we use technology so much that, you know, our managers on our files are often from Halifax. Or someone is working from St. John and we pull someone from Halifax, and you know, maybe they spend half their time in Truro or Halifax, but they spend the other half at home online. So maybe there's not positions in your area that you're looking for, but there's opportunity anyway to do those positions from wherever you are.
Any more questions? Yes?
When it comes to benefits, specifically like pension, healthcare, along the lines of medical and dental, how good are they?
So for everyone online, that question was in regards to benefits, such as pension and healthcare, and how does that go?
So can't speak totally to this because I don't know all the ins and outs of benefits, but I can say what anecdotally that you know, the health authority is a quasi-government organization, and we've been known for very healthy and attractive benefits, both in terms of pension and other offerings. So I'd say extremely competitive, maybe better than the average private sector. So to that end, I would say, yeah, quite attractive to folks looking for employment.
Yeah, I'll echo with that. Certainly at the NSLC, we do take advantage of the provincial pension plans. So having the defined benefit plan is sort of the Rolls Royce of pensions. And health and dental, it's A1 as well. The days of having your benefits fully paid for, I think, unfortunately, are coming to an end. That's just the reality of the market right now. So if you can get into anywhere that has it fully paid, then man, take advantage of that. But yeah, I think most companies know that in order to attract good people and retain good people, you need to offer a good benefits package and good pension plan. So definitely that's something to watch out for. But yeah, the government is something certainly that's attractive when in comparison to sort of the salaries that generally government pays, which can be below market average. You sort of make up for it on the other end.
I think generally speaking, you know, we're one of the larger credit unions in Nova Scotia, and we have a solid benefits plan. It's, I think, to Kevin's point, it's gotten competitive enough that there aren't very many companies out there now that don't have some version. It would sort of be where each falls, you know, compared to the other. All the big banks have, you know, to be completely fair, great benefit packages and some form of defined benefit or generally defined contribution pension plans. So put some money in and they'll match up money. So and it's their business, it's our business as well. So generally your ability to plan for your future by way of pension, you're kind of working for banks, right? So they get it. And I would say even smaller companies right now are in order to be competitive, to get the right type of talent, they're offering benefits and pension stuff way more than they used to, right? It's pretty common now.
From an accounting firm perspective, I would say that the benefits are pretty good. They make up for maybe lackings in other departments, but like our medical and dental is really great, actually. We pay almost nothing for most of our medical and dental plans, depending on what you choose. Savings is sort of lacking until you get to a certain level, till you get to senior associate and manager and higher have more savings opportunities. We're an accounting firm, so we don't have defined benefit plans anymore. They're too smart to have defined benefit, but defined contribution we still have. So, but you don't get to those until the manager or higher role. So there's definitely some benefits. There's lots of vacation. We have a fitness benefit. You get so much to spend on fitness equipment or gym memberships or that kind of thing. So there's definitely some good benefits there too.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question out there? Yep.
What feeling of quality or trait do you see in people that really makes them stand out as someone who can work their way up and go far?
So, sorry. So for the folks online, that was a question regarding which types of qualities and traits can help people be successful in the future.
So I think, the first and probably most obvious thing in an interview is the person's ability to interview, to interact in that interview. You read a lot into how the person reacts to questions. The answers, a lot of times you'll get the same answers, but it's the comfort with which people give that answer. And that comes with practice and confidence in interviewing skills. That doesn't necessarily always translate to the best employee. Some people are better at interviews. So it's really reading not only someone's ability to be a good interviewer, but also matching that up with their resume, with their experience, and the examples, real life examples that they'll use in those interview situations. So, but the interview skill is a key.
Yeah, the people skills are definitely the most important. Like in our roles, we meet with clients a lot. So if your clients like you, if you're great with your clients and you can have those conversations with them and be honest and friendly and just a people person, they really appreciate it. And if your clients like you on the job, then it makes you more invaluable to the firm because those clients want you back. So definitely your people skills and yeah, absolutely the people skills for interviewing too are extremely important.
Yeah, I think having a good attitude will get you so far in life. Probably more so than the piece of paper that you'll walk out of here with. Just being things like respectful, sort of think before you speak. Just generally a good attitude about life, about work, about any situations, any scenarios that you face. Having a winning attitude is going to get you very far.
I think sincerity, like people can generally tell if you're being sincere, and part of that would be doing the job that you're in without giving the impression that you're already thinking about 3 jobs out, right? So, and everyone is, right? Everyone's thinking, okay, I don't want to necessarily steer, but we've talked a lot about starting in one, proving you can do the one that you've been hired for, with a good attitude, all the sort of table stake stuff, but get that job done well without necessarily 2 months in saying, okay, I'm ready for the next one, right? Like show someone that you can commit to something and do it well and listen and learn. But people will also expect that you may or may not want to do that particular job forever. So giving them a sense like, yeah, man, I'm good at this, but this is kind of where I see myself down there. And people will help you get there if you show that you can do the job you were hired for. Because I think we all get a little ahead of ourselves sometimes too, but I don't know if that helps.
Thanks. Any other questions out there? Yep. So the question on there for the online students was about the application process and what parts of that do you need when applying for a job?
Yeah, so all of our positions are posted online, and you have the opportunity there to submit resume and cover letter. I can honestly say I haven't gone through the process in a while, so not familiar totally with the process, but I know it is all electronic now. We go in there and review resumes and cover letters, and those are very important documents. Pay attention to the detail in there. There's nothing worse than seeing a resume that says I pay attention to detail and it's misspelled, or there's something missing. Half a date is there. Those are really little things, but pay attention to that, especially when you get large numbers of resumes. It's easy to find something to say, yeah, I'm going to put that one to the side. So very important.
I guess I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Our hiring process always seems to be changing, but I think what they've settled in on, and like I said, a couple other places are doing this, is our process is somewhat backwards. So to the start of the process is that you go on and you do 3 types of assessments. So there's like a culture assessment, whether you'll fit in with us, and then logic questions, and there's another set of questions as well. So you have to pass those 3 assessments right off the bank to get into recorded video questions. So your question comes up on the screen, you record a response. No one's there on the other end, but those responses go to a manager. They review those, and then from those they sort of filter people out, and then that's when you actually get called in for an interview, and at that time is when your resume gets passed in. And actually we don't even ask for cover letters anymore, so you don't have to prepare a cover letter. So yeah, they're trying more at our firm anyway to look at the sort of whole person, see what you're like, your presentation skills, your people skills, like I mentioned earlier, before looking at, okay, is this person a 4.0 GPA, or is this person a 3.5, or and that stuff still matters. Like it still is taken into account, but it's not until later in the process, because they want someone that's got a great GPA but is also a good people person. So it's a little backwards, but that's the new way for us.
I wish I didn't have to read cover letters. So maybe I'll talk to your people. No, it's the same with Bob. We post our jobs on online and accept applications at that time. So unfortunately, we can't just hire whoever we want to whenever we want. There's a bit of a restriction on that, but yeah, it's the cover letter, resume, and then typically, if we like the looks of that, it would be coming in for a test. And then if you pass the test, then you would go on to the interview stage. But yeah, most certainly the detail thing. If I see Nova Scotia Liquor Commission, I throw the resume in the garbage. It's corporation, so it's a detail thing.
Not sure specifically what the process is at CUA. Like if we require a cover letter, I tend to agree that I think personally cover letters are a little bit redundant at this point, but they still exist. There's still places that are looking for them. Similarly, CUA would have online postings. We would push things into Career Beacon. I would say, for my 2 cents, know who you're applying to and gear it accordingly, right? So, but to that point also, figure out who you know there, right? So these guys have talked about, like Kevin says, he sees resumes. I haven't sent a blind resume in years, anyone, and I've moved around a little bit more. And granted, I'm old, so I know a lot of people, but figure out through your network, even through your colleagues or whoever, who do I know there, right? And how many degrees of separation are between the people you know there? Because if there's 100 people that have sent in different versions of cover letters or resumes, I guarantee you one kind word from someone who knows the hiring manager or is even 2 or 3 degrees removed from the hiring manager will serve you just as well, if not better, in most cases, right? Again, I can't remember the last time I applied blind to it. It happens, you have to do that. But as soon as you see it on Career Beacon or somewhere on LinkedIn, get to work and figure out how you can get closer to it and how you can jump the queue, right? LinkedIn. I would, more and more places, depending on, again, how progressive they are, looking at LinkedIn. So fill it out, make sure you get as much information in LinkedIn as you can. It's not, in my opinion, it's not as cool a tool as it was a number of years ago, but it's still, from a hiring perspective, a really valuable tool. And I think also recognizing the strengths and limitations of your resume coming out of school, right? So you don't have 5 years of accounting or banking experience, but like all of us, you've done jobs at X, Y, Z part-time. Some of them you probably enjoyed, some of them you probably hated, you needed to. Good hiring people will look at even those jobs, like your job at the movie theater or your job somewhere, and say, okay, tell me about that, because it's what you have to work with, right? So don't discount that, and know that your resume or your LinkedIn isn't going to reflect a whole lot of experience. It can't, right? This is where it starts in a lot of cases for many of you. And for us, we're small and local, so I think don't discount also that there are going to be organizations who, like Nick has referenced, GPAs are great, but people who can communicate with customers or clients or colleagues in a way that is productive and positive is huge, right? Because not everyone can. So with small local companies, they will emphasize, not just your goals and aspirations, kind of what are you good at? Like they'll get a vibe from you, right? So that's probably more than you asked for, but it's, I think the LinkedIn part, the part-time jobs, highlighting some of those strengths, but also knowing who you're applying to. So if it's a big stuffy bank, then gear your resume and cover letter that way accordingly.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the audience? There's about 15 minutes, give or take, so maybe 2 or 3 more questions. No one? Come on. Yes?
So, if you could go back in time and have like dinner with your 20-year-old self, what would be the most important thing you would say that would have an impact on like your career and who you are like as a person? And thinking that of that answer from a standpoint as a student who's looking to apply for a job. So, what would be the most important thing you would say? I would maybe change this, or I would do this better because in the long run it would lead to me being in a different place that I may have wanted to be in that I may not be in right now, or having better skills in this area.
So for everyone online, that was a question regarding if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 20-year-old self if you were looking for a job now?
Well, if I could go back to when I was 20, I'd pick up my dial phone and, no. I think the thing that I would like to have changed about myself or done better is that preparation for interviews. I still don't consider myself a good interview. I struggle with having confidence in speaking, and here I am in front of people speaking. So it's something that really requires practice, and you have to really put a lot of effort into it. I didn't do that in my early years. I'd go into an interview thinking that, yeah, this shouldn't be any problem, and I should be able to get the job, and I could beg and plead for the job, and they'd give me the job. Like, why should we hire you? Well, because I'm really good at this, and I really, would like to work here. Well, there's a lot of better answers I could have given, and I think if I wanted to change one thing, and one thing that I think probably would have had a better impact, because I feel like I had the skills, I had the knowledge, but I wasn't able to get that across in an interview. So I think practicing or being better prepared for interviews would be something I would improve upon.
So this is sort of a funny question for me because I wouldn't have to go back very far or at all. But if I could talk back to my college or university self, I guess the thing I would say from working at a firm, like when I went for my interview, I was frankly pretty terrified to talk to a partner, right? But I think it's important to remember that everybody's just people. Like even now, sometimes, when I go to talk to a partner or something in the Halifax office, I don't know them very well. I might get a little bit nervous, but it's important to remember that the person you're interviewing with, while of course you want to be professional in that, they are still, a regular person at the end of the day. They like to laugh, or they like to, have something in common. So I guess just being comfortable, which leads back, I guess, to your people skills really too. But just important to not forget that that everybody's just a person. So it's helpful for interviewing for sure.
I don't know if I changed too much. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect by any means, but I mean, I had a lot of fun in university. I didn't work in any office when I was going through university. I worked at a campground and enjoyed my summers outside mowing lawns. So, I mean, the reality is that you're going to have probably some of your funnest times now and when you're young. Don't overthink it, I guess is what I would say, because certainly I was able to get a job within a couple months of graduating, and I think things turned out pretty well for me. So if you're trying to be the VP within 5 years of graduating, you might be disappointed, but don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, and just be yourself and sort of take the time now to sort of enjoy things and live life to the fullest now, I guess.
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of things I would go back. There are bad days, like in everything I've ever done. There were bad days, and it's just and everyone has them. Even what you're doing now. Don't jump or make rash decisions. Is what I would tell myself based on a bad day. I switched a job once just because it was the proverbial straw on the camel's back day, and I was like, "That's it, I'm out." I wish I hadn't now. So take those in stride, because there's going to be those bad days, is what I would say, and then also respect the culture, and I'll say the game of where you may end up, especially in larger companies, because the reality is big companies have lots of rules. They have to. That's how they exist. If they didn't, it would be pandemonium. They need rules, and sometimes it feels awful. Just so many rules and regulations and things that ensure big companies, and not just banks or accounting firms like Rogers, Bell, like those, they're monsters, right? They need rules. And if on the days when the rules suck the most, people know when you're hating it, and people know that you're frustrated with it. And so either accept that and live within that, the realities of a big company, or change the environment and find a company that's more suited to your potential frustrations around that. But there's probably jobs I stayed in too long when I was frustrated, and there's probably a couple that I jumped out on too early just because of a bad day. So I think that kind of idea.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, if someone has one. Yep.
Would it be more effective to drop off your resume and cover letter in person rather than just sending it online and trying to meet a hiring manager in person?
So that question for the folks online was, is it more effective to drop off a resume in person rather than online?
So for us, that's not an option. All resumes are to come through the electronic online posting. Where it can come into play, and my colleagues alluded to this a little earlier, is through networking. So anytime you can network and reach out and have some sort of contact, either yourself or someone you know, to the hiring manager, to know that your resume is in that pool. That familiar name when they're reviewing resumes never hurts. So, unfortunately, that is no longer an option of bringing a piece of paper into the office and placing it in front of somebody and having a conversation. But the networking piece does come into play from time to time, and there's a solid process for intake of that information. So.
Yeah, I'd basically echo everything that was just said there. It's not really an option at I would say probably at all the accounting firms, but that networking is super important for sure. At a small company, like out in industry, I would say if it's a small enough company that is still an option, it's something I would do for sure, because it is part of, those people might not be at networking events, but some of the large places, it's certainly not for us and probably not for most. I think we'll find out here.
Yeah, I don't work at the reception desk, so I wouldn't probably see it. But getting your name in the door however you can, it's probably the best thing to do.
I think we're probably a bit different, and I think banks would be similar. I think anyone with a storefront or something where it's more accessible that way. So for me, and I'm not a hiring manager, but that would show initiative, right? Especially if you've done your homework to figure out who I was. Again, for us, it's could you walk into one of our branches and ask to speak to the manager? You absolutely could, right? It's just it's not better or worse. It's just a different environment. And I would guarantee that there would be certain hiring managers within banking and insurance and financial services environments who would find that refreshing because they probably don't see it a whole lot anymore. And it would absolutely be differentiating because there's probably, for that reason, there's not a lot of people doing it. So again, depending on what you've got your site set on, maybe not necessarily where it's strictly portal access, but if it's someone where you could get at that person easily enough, even if there's a layer between, I would absolutely do it if you thought you could. I think it would be pretty cool.
Thank you. So that clues up our fall 2017 accounting and finance panel. I'm sure you guys will stick around for a couple of minutes afterwards. So if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, or you just wanted to introduce yourself, I'm sure they would be happy to chat with you. This way, to stamp your learning passport, please fill it out in its entirety, and they will stamp it as well as the survey. So thank you all for coming.